Good morning and welcome to the Daily Cyber Briefing for Monday, the 2nd of September. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Last week we spoke about Microsoft's vulnerabilities in Microsoft's Copilot that could allow for the exfiltration of or the exposure of data. Apparently, Microsoft has now patched this vulnerability, although there's very little in the way of detail around what it is they've done. And interestingly, the vulnerabilities that people were concerned about were the sorts of vulnerabilities we spoke in some length of last week about how if you put commands into the input text into AIs, you can trick them into doing things. Well, this particular vulnerability in Copilot has been demonstrated using ASCII smuggling to inject malicious prompts into the AI model. That, as we've said last week, is extremely difficult to prevent. So yes, maybe there has been some work done on this. I would still remain cautious until this has been thoroughly tested as to whether this has addressed, rather than addressing a specific issue, whether it's addressed the broader class of issues, including things like embedding clickable hyperlinks within whatever it may be. So yeah, if you are still tempted or still using Copilot, be aware. Despite the positive sounding news, I don't think we're there yet. Okay, there is a new piece of, or a new updated and newly discovered, but rather than actually new, piece of Linux malware known as SEDEXP. SEDEXP has been kicking around actually for a couple of years undetected. It uses UDEV rules to maintain persistence and appears to have come from a financially motivated threat actor. The way this works is that it is set to trigger every time dev random is loaded. Now, the way that UDEV works is UDEV it's quite a nice concept. Back in the day, any device that you plugged into, I'm talking 20 odd years ago, I suspect, something like that. But I definitely remember any device that you plugged into a Linux machine required you to specifically load the drivers for it. So you could, even things like keyboard screens. The one which used to have me faffing about for more time than I should have been spending on these things was stuff like USB sticks or external hard drives. External network cards, anything like this. So you had to actually tell the operating system what it is that's just been plugged in, and please go and load it and make it work. Now, you could preload some of these things into the kernel so that they would always look to see if it was there or not. Made things like unplugging things pain in the arse. It meant that storage devices didn't auto mount, all those sorts of things. So UDEV came along and said, well, it's okay, what we'll do is we'll just monitor the devices being plugged in, and then we will match them to what they are if we recognize them, and we will automatically mount or install or whatever that particular device. So UDEV sits there waiting for things to be prodded in the dev as in device, not development, the slash dev um, directory. Um, this particular piece of malware then is triggered when devrandom is loaded. Now, devrandom is loaded every time a device is booted, and then pretty much sits there silently in the background. So this particular piece of malware is quite. It's not sophisticated, but it is clever in a sort of Machiavellian way. That it's difficult to identify that it has been loaded, and it is also difficult to get rid of it unless you've actually found what, just the way it's triggered means it's almost definitely loading. So be aware of this. It is worth scanning Linux devices for the presence of this, because it has, although it's been around for a long time, it has literally only just been identified. So be aware of that if you're running Linux environment. Just check to make sure that said exp hasn't sneakily got into your device. There is a new-ish ransomware as a service operation being tracked as Cicada 3301. 19 victims on their extortion portal so far. It targets VMware ESXi systems. It is not related to the online stroke real world game from 2012 to 2014. It just happens to share, well, they nicked the name from there. So there's an article from Bleeping Computer that does include various quite useful pieces of indicators of compromise. So if you are running ESXi, VMware ESXi, worth having a read of this article, worth following out on some of the links from this. But there are, as I say, some indicators of compromise that you may well want to ensure you have configured alerting for in your security visibility tooling or your SIEM or whatever it may be. On other matters, there is a SQL injection vulnerability that could allow attackers to bypass airport security. Now, this is in the category of, there's pretty much nothing that most of us can do about this, but the reason that I'm bringing it to your attention is it's a trivial bit of SQL injection that allows an attacker to bypass the known crew member and the cockpit access security system authorizations. So basically, the way these work, you may have seen that airline staff, air crew, whatever you call them, the pilot and whoever, don't have to go through. They don't have to join the massive queues to get onto get through security at an airport, and that's because they're on a particular system. So they, once identified as them, they are allowed through. That's effectively what the known crew member system does. The cockpit access security system allows pilots to, because there are spare seats, I didn't know this, but I suppose that's what I did. There are spare seats in the cockpit, and pilots flying from one airport to another can kind of hitch a lift in order to get to where they're going so they can fly the next plane out, kind of thing. So if you can bypass these two systems, you can get through security, and you may potentially be able to get into the cockpit of aeroplanes. Now, there are, as we are well aware, there are certain groups and certain regimes in the world that would very much like to be able to do both of those things for yeah for reasons including stuff like 9/11. So this is quite serious. Um, TSA, who basically look after this stuff, don't appear to get it. They first of all announced that no, you couldn't bypass the systems, even though you quite, quite demonstrably can. So there we go. It is presumably being worked on in the background. It raises questions around the way that. Well, first of all, it. Shows that there are vulnerabilities in the vulnerabilities are actually in the FlyCAS application or solution, which provides and checks the integrity of KCM and CASS programs. So basically, it's a solution used by smaller airlines in order to manage this stuff. Well, it also then highlights gaps in the TSA's vetting process. So quite a lot of things to worry about there. Now, we can't do anything about any of this stuff as normal humans, but it just is a really good example of how a very simple, and this apparently is a very straightforward SQL injection vulnerability, could cause all sorts of real world issues and could put people's lives in danger. So there is no excuse for not doing at least the basic security testing on any applications that are being released. And let's be honest, SQL injection has been kicking around on the OWASP top 10 for a very, very long time. So you would not expect applications, especially applications that are primarily there in order to facilitate the security of humans in aeroplanes, in critical situations. You wouldn't expect this sort of stuff to be out there. So just as a reminder, if you are coding up this kind of stuff, don't beat up the security guys when they're saying, have you tested it? Because if you're good, the testing won't show anything, which is fine, and it will go into production and you're all right. If you've missed something, you could save people's lives by testing the stuff properly. So it's more of a reminder to continue to, whilst we all get diverted onto the latest clever stuff, don't forget a lot of the attacks that are successful are based around very simple things, including this. So that's all from me for today.